Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, you all, for being here. I'm going to give sort of a sneak peek or an overview of Rising Tides, Contemporary Art in the Ecology of Water, the exhibition that's currently up at the Michener, which features work by Marguerita and Diane. So this exhibition is on view until January 10th, 2021, and it celebrates the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which occurred this past April. It features the work of 7 contemporary artists from the greater Delaware Valley who provide new perspectives on the shifting forms, topographies, and ecosystems of water. So artists include Emily Brown, Diane Burko, Janet Filomeno, Marguerita Hagan, Stacy Levy, Pat Martin, and Paula Winokur. And all of these artists identify as women, and the Michener is actually featuring women artists in all of its exhibitions this fall to celebrate the centennial of women's suffrage. So this exhibition celebrates 2 important anniversaries this year. As you can see from this slide, the artists in Rising Tides work across a variety of media. So there is painting, drawing, sculpture, ceramic, and site-specific installations. Overall, the exhibition celebrates the power of art to visualize ecological crisis and global change, and inspires us to take action towards a more environmentally sustainable future. The featured artworks are hopeful and even exuberant in their celebration of the natural beauty that surrounds us, but they also encourage us to think deeply about the human impact on our planet. So I hope if you haven't already, you will come by and see the exhibition. As Matt said, you can purchase time tickets on the Michener's website, and also keep an eye out on our website and on social media for some other exciting virtual programs this fall. So now I'm going to turn it over to the real stars of the show, our artists, Diane and Marguerita. And Diane is going to kick us off. So
okay, thank you. If it all works well, I will be beginning right now. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Laura, for your great curatorial work. I'm thrilled to be in this show, and I'm thrilled to be with all the other artists who are in this show. I'm going to talk about my work in the show and my relationship to activism, but I want to pay special tribute to the young people in the audience who are the future, but they're also the present. And let's see if this is, well, I'm already having, there we go. I'm not a young person anymore, but I am an activist, and I've been that way for a long time. I also love relating to young people, and this is, I would say, the youngest group I ever spoke to about climate change. And I was kind of stumped about how to do it. And then I remembered I could start with Frozen, and that was a great place to begin. And we had a wonderful time. This is an image of last year at the Greenfield School celebrating Earth Day, when one could still hang out and talk about such things. Unfortunately, I couldn't do that this year. I talk about my work and I talk about climate wherever I go. As a matter of fact, public engagement is part of my practice. It's a research practice, it's a painting practice, it's also photography and time-based media, but I won't have an exhibition unless the place I'm exhibiting, museum, gallery, promises to let me talk about activism. I think it's important to realize that being involved with the environment, artists being involved with the environment, is not new in the 21st century. Artists have always been concerned and care about nature, especially if they paint it or photograph it. And so I think it's good to know about someone like Thomas Moran, who actually helped establish the first national park, Yellowstone, and Ansel Adams, who was someone very, very active in the conservation movement. But there are artists today who carry on that tradition. And they carried it on in different ways than what you might see at the Michener. If you go to visit most of the work in the Michener, there is 3D work, but it isn't as big as this. And a lot of installation artists, a lot of performances, a lot of big work has been created to call attention to this crucial issue, climate change. And Olafur Eliasson is one of those artists and someone who really has devoted a lot of his current work to this issue. And I should point out those lights you're seeing, those are all powered by the sun. Edward Bertinski is another active photographer who recently produced an incredible show in Toronto called The Anthropocene, but also a great film, and I highly recommend that you guys try to see it. This is a group that's been taking artists through the Arctic and creating various situations and performances, visual performances as they go along. This is one of my favorite ones from the Venice Biennale from 2017. And Justin, I just noticed it says Houston instead of Justin. It's Justin Bryce Guariglia. This is an artist who brings the issue to public places. And he had a whole wonderful installation on the Chicago Navy Pier, and he's done work like this and similar work throughout the world, actually. The Venice Biennale last year gave their top prize to this incredible performance piece. This was an opera, and it was an opera called Marina, and people would watch it, and I couldn't get there, but I've been told they would cry. It was so moving. Now, the youth of today, the students in the audience, all of us are going to be impacted with the issues that are confronting us in terms of climate, which I think most people, maybe not the president, but most people seem to know it's not a hoax. And I'm just so proud of the way young people are not just there, they understand it. They understand it better than some adults. And I just want to give my hats off to the Sunrise Movement, which has been an active movement for quite a while. And I recommend if people in the audience, young people in the audience, check them out, go to their programs and, activate with them. Now, where do I come into all this? Well, I thought I should just give you a real quick run through of the last 50 years of my life and maybe 5 images so you won't be bored. I started out basically as a landscape artist and painting in the landscape as we did. And that was my tradition, en plein air painting, but this is way back last century. And these are some examples of some of those paintings, about one every decade. Like I said, we have to zip through art history here. This one is a particular special one because it is part of the Michener collection. And also, I've done a lot of photography. The Michener actually has a lot to do with how I got involved with climate change. I had a show there in 2006 that was about a big volcano project I had done in my trips to Iceland, places like that. And they included, the curator included an earlier painting, because this is a traveling show, and when it got to the Michener, there was another space for another painting. And she remembered that I had made this painting early in my career. Actually, I had painted a lot of snow and ice paintings, mountains mostly, in the 70s. So it was in the exhibition, and I was talking about it as I was walking through the exhibition, and I realized that it was done 30 years before I was there, So it was kind of strange seeing that, and my mind started jumping into the snow, thinking about the snow. Now, you might say that's crazy because I'm talking to an audience, but women, I'm a woman, we can think about more than one thing at the same time. So 2006 was a crucial time. It was the time that Inconvenient Truth came out. It was the time that Elizabeth Kolbert wrote her very famous book. And climate change was in the air. So I started thinking about it when I went back to my studio, was starting a new project, and I learned about repeat photography and started a whole series of paintings about repeat photography. What is that? Well, apparently I found out geologists have been not only recording what happens to nature, they have been photographing it, they've been documenting it. And so I took those documentations, asked if I had permission, and started making paintings about them. Another thing that geologists do is they use recessional lines. And I started making paintings about recessional lines, meaning how does the glacier move up and melt? And here you have an example of two, I put them together from two different glaciologists, and shows what's been happening with this glacier. Geologists also use Landsat imagery. That means imagery that comes from satellites. And so there's an example of some of that Landsat. I realized after I'd been doing this study for a while and researching things that what was missing from my practice, which was there before, was bearing witness. And so I began bearing witness. I began going to these melting glaciers and most recently reefs. And I learned from scientists in the field. I learned by going to scientific conferences where I sometimes was invited to speak. I learned by going to research labs and connecting with the scientists, grad students, and people who could teach me and explain their research to me. And all that information then was processed in my studio. I went back to my lab, and this is just two studio shots that I'm showing where you're seeing some of the work that's similar to what's in the show. So there are two studio shots, and here's an actual image from NASA that I based this painting on. And to the right, you have two other images from NASA where Novaya Zemlya comes from, and this is a archipelago off of Russia. And this is another example, and another part of my practice, which is photography. And these are the sources of those images. After a while, quite a while, I decided I had to start looking into oceans. And I did, and a show resulted of that pretty recently. And it kind of covered going from glaciers to reefs. And these are some install shots which show you lenticulars and a video I did and some other kind of work. Here's an example of what a lenticular is. And there are some more shots from that exhibition. That exhibition occurred in Washington, D.C. at the same time as the American Geophysical Union Conference. What is that? Well, it's where about 25,000 earth scientists from all over the world come. And I was fortunate, they knew me, I lectured there, and they decided to not only allow me to organize a panel with a marine biologist, but also they had a reception at the National Academy of Sciences when my show was going on. And this links me, you might see a little piece there that looks familiar. This is what links me to my good friend, Marguerita. I learned about Marguerita when I started working on the oceans. A former teacher of hers, Linda Brenner, said, you have to meet Marguerita. You two are two peas in a pod. And we did meet. We've gone to research labs together, and I invited her to join me at this conference. And there we are, right before the conference happened. And I'm going to now turn over my presentation to Marguerita.
Thank you, Diane.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Laura and Matt, the Michener. I want to thank all of everybody joining in right now live and those listening to the recording. And thank you so much to all the youth and students that are with us today. Just can't wait to hear your presentations. Now Mercury is going retrograde, so if we have any glitches, we're gonna just deal with them, okay? Here we go. So, so this is a clip of my installation, Interdependence, and with the humpback whales, it's a mother and a calf calling to each other. And as the lens dives us into the sea with which we are intrinsically linked. So my Lemaire series that's at Rising Tides, it shines light on life of the ocean. As an advocate for the thriving of all life in mutually sustainable communities and environments, my message in my work for Rising Tide was critical prior to the pandemic, but now it feels 1,000 times more important for the connection in all things as a rhythm in my practice, which includes us, our responsibility and power to transform our damage and destruction to each other and the planet. It's as if nature has collectively grabbed us by the shoulders with COVID. We have ignored every warning as climate change intensifies, along with rampant social injustice and destructive systems that profit a few and undermine all else. We are in a time of epic opportunity to resist, to reset history. As we have everything to lose, including ourselves, we can turn this around. My 60 sculptures in the exhibit each tell a story of nature's genius, a model of sustainability for us. The microscopic basis of life works in mutually beneficial systems, and it's time that we got the memo. My inspiration comes from nature and researching and learning from and collaborating with scientists and artists and getting in the ocean, diving or snorkeling as much as that I can. Here, Diane and I are visiting Dr. Eric Cordes and Alexis Weinig at Temple University in Philadelphia, just after he had discovered the largest known deep sea coral reef in history. It's approximately 100 miles long, just off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. And his findings helped turn over the drilling that was targeted in that area to save approximately 40,000 years of slow-growing deep-sea coral ecosystems. Alexis is showing us the samples of Lophelia pertusa that looks very much like a branching anemone. There we go. So this is perpetual Lophelia pertusa. It's an homage to the deep-sea coral with an infinity of tentacles. My work is hand-built low-fire clay and is intuitive, but can be quite technical at times. So today, we're just gonna focus on the concept. So frustal flower is a part of my micro grow series, and it's an abstraction of the architecture of a diatom. A frustal is the glass shell or test of a diatom, which houses plankton. These are microscopic marine organisms, but they also live in fresh water and even in the moisture in the soil. They are responsible for 25% of the planet's oxygen and earns them the title lungs of our planet. My visits with Dr. Marina Potapova at the Academy of Natural Sciences really was enlightening on my learning about diatoms. The Academy has the second largest diatom collection in the world. It's also called the herbarium collection, and it's all seen in a microscope. So I made Cayo Blanco daydreaming after snorkeling off of Trinidad, Cuba. Underwater, I imagined the brain coral opening into lace. The power of sculpture is that it asks us to see things from different perspectives, and sometimes inside and out. This radiolarian inspiration, daughter cells, is about thriving and growth. While working on it, I learned that the single cells typically reproduce asexually and produce a new cell called the daughter cell. right. Here is a beautiful woman has come, English for Nefertiti, and she has a similar profile to the famous bust of the only female Egyptian pharaoh. Nefertiti ruled during the most successful time in Egypt's history, and may this be an intention for our next chapter in history. Learning the translation made it a perfect name for this abstraction of a female brain coral spawning. My most complex piece to date, she emerged during the dark months of COVID, releasing new life, a new way and hope. I discovered while in the early stages of this piece that the ridges on the brain coral's labyrinth are actually tentacles that fold over, and at night they lift up. So this shows the tentacles rising and sending off her eggs of future generations. Brain corals spawn once a year by the full moon, either at between the end of July to early August. And it's the spectrum of the light of the moon that causes them to do this, so that the females will release their eggs, and about 15 to 20 minutes later, the males will send clouds of sperm in broadcast fertilization. A view of interdependence showing the Earth as seen from Apollo 17 astronauts who captured this most recognized photograph in the world. It became the symbol for Earth Day. And the blue planet is our home, thanks to the ocean. The pieces are laid out in the ocean currents and expand into a marine Milky Way. The sculptures magnify the microscopic colonies of diatoms being eyed by the humpback whale up on the left. And diatoms are a huge part of the diet of one of the largest creatures on our planet. Everything is connected, no matter the scale. On the right image, microscopic dinoflagellates swim around the broad club cuttlefish shield in a big play on scale. The legend on the gallery wall lists the science names of the 53 sculptures in the Interdependence installation. We're gonna get through that glitch. Here, I'll show you Rich. Here's Rich. So Rich and I, my collaborator and cinematographer, Rich Gretzinger, mastered the animation video projection for Interdependence. And I could not have had a better, more adaptive partner as we completed and installed the work during lockdown. There we go. That works. So welcome. Here is Wangari Maathai. Meet the inspiration behind the youth movement I will share next. Environmental activist from Kenya. She started the Greenbelt movement in 1977, teaching women in Kenya to plant trees to restore the erosion due to logging. Starting as a women's movement in Kenya, planting trees grew global. She used every means for transformation, social, environmental, government, and law. In 2004, she was Africa's first woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She held the title of the Ambassadors of Our Forests. And I heard her speak in Seattle, and her energy was contagious and ecstatic. The Greenbelt movement is thriving today and has planted billions of trees around the world. And you can see more about her and the other activists on my eSource page, E for Environment, that Matt will be putting in the chat for us. So Felix Finkbeiner, when Felix was 9 years old, he had homework assignment on Wangari Maathai. So he was so moved by her life and activism that he started a global youth movement. At 10, he started his youth campaign, Stop Talking and Start Planning, to spread the idea, mobilizing political, cultural, and artistic celebrities for support. He addressed the UN in 2011. Today, his Plant for the Planet has planted, mobilized by children all over the world, 15.2 billion seedlings in 193 countries. What were you doing at 9, right? Now 20, Felix has been active for more than a decade, over half of his life. And he has founded a new organization called Believe Earth. A very different style of activism is Greta Thunberg, Swedish environmental activist. In 2018, at 15, Greta started what is now an ongoing global school walkout to raise awareness of global warming. We already have all the facts and solutions, she says. All we have to do is wake up and change. During Greta's TED Talk, she shared her mental illness. She is autistic and has Asperger's syndrome. She said she only speaks when it's incredibly necessary, and that this was one of those moments. Living on the spectrum, she sees things in black and white. She gave a grave talk to world leaders at the UN Climate Action Summit in 2019. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? These times call for her direct laser-like approach. Dr. Sylvia Earle, she is now 85 years old and going strong, holding many, many titles. She has been in the ocean more hours and deepest depths than any human alive. She was the first woman to do everything in her field. And she represented the ocean where everybody else at the climate talks in Paris in 2015 were there representing a country. She was there representing the ocean. She has founded Mission Blue, which is also a fantastic documentary about her project on Netflix, Ocean Elders, and she's a creator of Hope Spots, which is protecting areas in our ocean. People ask, why should I protect the ocean? Well, she says it's the blue heart of our planet, and we should take care of our heart. It's what makes life possible for us. Everybody has the capacity to do it. So I'm going to show a piece of this clip. This is going to be of Plankton Blooms. It's from my installation, and they are microscopic organisms, and they photosynthesize over half of the oxygen for the planet. Every other breath we breathe. So although they're only one cell, their blooms have been captured by satellite video in space, and Rich has animated the micro to the macro. So if microscopic organisms can support all life on our planet for hundreds of millions of years, imagine what we can achieve together. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to conjure myself back here. Thank you, Marguerita. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Laura. Now we've come to the section of our program where we have a few volunteer students who have, we've asked to tell a little bit about themselves and then ask a question for Marguerita, Diane, and Laura. So first, I know Lily, are you there, Lily Mando?
Yes, but I'm actually in the car at the moment.
That's okay.
Watching this.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and ask your question to our, there you are. Hi.
Oh, there she is.
Hello, my name is Lily Mandel. My pronouns are she and her. I am 18 years old. I just turned 18 a couple weeks ago. I go to Central Bucks High School South, and I am the founder and core organizer of the Bucks County student-led group for environmental and social justice known as BScape. It stands for Bucks Students for Climate Action and Protection of the Environment. So what we do is we have a lot of community events. We seek to educate the community and the public, bring attention to social justice causes, especially surrounding the environment, hold legislators and local officials accountable for their actions, and organize especially young people, and bridge that gap when it comes to taking care of the environment and the climate, both locally and globally. Some of the events that we've done to try and accomplish this is that we have had, we hosted a summit back in February, and it was lucky because it was actually just before COVID hit. But we had a summit where it was open to the public, and each of our B-scape leaders, organizers, students of all ages from elementary school to high school gave presentations about different topics about climate change and current climate politics, and basically the problems and solutions of climate change, including Indigenous sovereignty and environmental racism. And we had activities where people could come together and do some trivia and plant some seeds. And then we showed Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. So that was cool. Before that, we hosted a series of climate strikes back when Greta Thunberg was hosting hers, and it was a big world event. If you remember, in 2019 in September, from the 21st to the 27th was International Climate Week, and that's when all of the strikes and walkouts were happening. And we hosted our very own in Doylestown, where we had a very diverse group of speakers who came, and we all talked about all of the different causes and effects and solutions and problems regarding climate change and social justice in general, and how it's all connected. So we were able to educate the community in that way and organize everyone, and we did a community cleanup as well. So a lot of what we've been doing some bake sales, and what we actually were able to accomplish out of that was we raised money that we are hoping to continue to accumulate towards our goal of building a local greenhouse that will be open to the community. And the greenhouse will serve as not only a community garden of sorts, but also a climate informational center. So what we would like to do is we would like to show how, obviously, greenhouse, there's a reason why greenhouse gases are called greenhouse gases. So in that way, it's really cool because having a greenhouse is a way that we can show the public how the science of it actually works. And it's going to be, if we're able to get it, we're, I believe, halfway towards our goal. Our monetary goal of, I believe we would like to raise $1,500 to $2,000 to make a community greenhouse. We have a couple opportunities to make the greenhouse either in the center of town by Salem Church, but we have to figure that out. But we've also been offered space at the Bucks County Audubon Society. So we have a couple opportunities for that, so that's very exciting. Had a lot of support from the community. Beascape was actually featured in the Philadelphia Inquirer on the front cover back in September, which was really, really awesome. And you can see all of these pictures and all of these events on our website. It's beascape.org, and that's where we post all of our upcoming events. So our main thing that we're working on right now is we are actually coordinating with local members of the Lenape tribe and the 501c3 organization Arrows for American Indians. So we are working in coordination with them to create a virtual event that will celebrate the Indigenous people of this land and Indigenous people in general, especially as it pertains to the environment and climate justice. So we are going to feature a lot of Indigenous people and Indigenous activists, and we're going to honor the tribe that was originally here. whose land we're on right now in Bucks County, especially Doylestown, the Lenape tribe, and also amplify Indigenous and Native voices about, issues facing Indigenous communities today, especially in light of, Indigenous Peoples Day that occurred a couple of days ago. So that's what's up with Beascape.
Yeah, thank you. We actually featured that picture on our waiting screen before we got here. You were there, so we all got to see that photo. It's really good.
On the newspaper.
Yeah, it was really great.
Awesome.
Lily, so do you have I know you had to get to work. Do you have a question for our panelists?
Yes. Actually, I just had to get to the physical building and make sure that I wasn't going to be late if I stayed home to talk before I left. So no, I actually have I can actually stay on the call until 3. But I would say my question, how do you, I'm trying to think of how best to phrase this. I definitely have an idea of what I want to say. When it comes to art, how do you strive to make your art and your missions intersectional? So I know that we talked about how art pertains to the environment and how it pertains to climate justice. And so what I want to know is how do you succeed or attempt to include other voices and narratives in your artwork, especially when it comes to the environment? And if not, like, what do you think that you can and will do to amplify the diversity of the environmental movement and the artistry that comes with it?
That's a great question. Thank you, Lily. We really appreciate you chiming in and telling us all about Beascape. I put the link in the chat so people can check it out. But that's a great question. Diane or Marguerita, do either one of you have a thought on this question about involving different sorts of coalitions in your activist art?
Well,
go ahead.
Should I?
Go, if you're right, go, yeah.
I was just going to say, the way I've been a teacher all my life, a professor, so my way of communicating is teaching. And I use the knowledge that I've gathered by the research that I do, interacting with scientists and researchers and other artists, to share that with communities, different communities, hopefully communities that don't know much about climate change. I'm always trying to very subtly convince people. So I'm kind of like a subversive artist. They can walk in and say, oh, that's beautiful. And then, hopefully they see the light by looking at a lot of the work, by seeing wonderful labels that Laura has put up in the Michener is a good example of it. So and of course I am an activist, so I'm always marching. But those are my two ways: educating, communicating, and marching. Oh, and of course there is voting.
Marguerita, how about you? Thank you, Diane.
I also have taught for all of my career. So I'm a sculptor working predominantly in clay, but in my community projects, I've done work with children of all ages, from 1 to 3 to 103, done public installations a lot through in the Northwest in Seattle. And here too, I've done some work with, did a primary producer wall with primary students at a friend's school, Westtown Friends School. And so I don't know, I just do it in every breath I take, and every step I take, and every thought is about sharing the beauty and the connections that we all share as people and on this planet. And in my sculpture, you know, I hope you get to go see Rising Tides, Lily. I don't know if you have, but this will probably answer some of these questions. My installation, for instance, has like 53 pieces. It's magnifying the microscopic organisms of our planet. It's a first life on our planet. They have supported our planet for hundreds of thousands, millions of years, and we just don't know about them. But if you can, through my sculpture, my intention is to magnify and illuminate what is making life possible on this planet and how we're so deeply connected in the spirit. So if you learn about it, you can't help but fall in love with it. And Jacques Cousteau says, people protect what they love. So this is, I don't know, every way that I possibly can. My sculpture, my community arts, my teaching. I have other series that are like from glyphs from Easter Island, and I do pit firing work, and it's a great community experience to do pit firings together. But I have such a resonance with indigenous peoples and their way of life, saw everything connected, and the white civilized culture sees it as a hierarchy on top with everything below them. So that's where I think we've really lost our way and what we need to change right now. But
great. Thank you, Marguerita. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Lily. We have a couple of more questions to get to, so I want to move on to the other students.
Thank you, Lily. Awesome work.
Yeah, keep up the work.
I wrote you a note in the chat, so please, I hope to hear back from you.
Yeah. All right, next is Alana there. Elena, are you there? Morales? Can I conjure you from the...
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hey.
And it is Alana.
Oh, Alana, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alana, can you tell us about yourself and ask a question for our panel here?
Yes, so my name is Alana Morales. I am currently a freshman at Kutztown University, so I'm also 18. I got involved in climate change through my dad. He was kind of my inspiration that way, and he's been a vegetarian since the 90s, and then when he became vegan, he kind of pushed that more on me, and I was fairly resistant at first, but now I'm a vegetarian and also a climate activist, so that's progress, I guess. I think I guess my question?
Yeah.
Tell us about any training you had, Alana.
Oh yeah, so I was part of Al Gore's climate reality leadership with my dad, not last August, but the August before COVID, obviously. And there I learned about how important it was, and like all different kinds of ways that we can help individually, and like also trying to help on a more broader aspect, so like with government officials and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really enlightening. I mean, I was involved in my environmental club at school, but not much since. So my question is, what do you guys as climate artists feel is most impactful about creating a show like this during a time of division and upheaval?
I think this show is so extraordinary in its timing and what it's bringing to the public, especially at this time. We were in lockdown. Like I mentioned, I think of it as a global wake-up call, but I feel like this show just exposes what's most important right now, and it also brings people together as well, because the only way we really will be able to move forward is by working together. I think it couldn't be at a better time. And the fact that we got shut down before we could open has almost made it richer, I believe, this exhibit.
Yeah, I agree with Marguerita that way. It does have more significance now. You know, I know it was supposed to open for Earth Day, but people, I believe more people than ever see that we are, as everyone says, all in this together. There is a connectivity that links everything together. It certainly links everyone together in terms of climate change. You know, there's a saying with scientists, glaciologists, what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. And here we have a pandemic, okay? It started in China, but here it is. So, although I don't want to give any credence to that idea, but here it is. There have been pandemics, there have been migrations. We travel across the world. Viruses travel, weather travels, climate travels, and we can't control a virus, but we have some control over the environment. And I think people are getting a wake-up call, you know?
That's great. Laura, do you have anything about, because you, I mean, organized this exhibition. Do you have any thoughts about the importance of an exhibition like this in a time right now?
Right. No, I agree. You know, and both Marguerite and Diane mentioned this, that the exhibition was supposed to open in April. So when the museum and basically the whole country shut down, we were in the middle of installing the show. It was supposed to be open over Earth Day on April 22nd. And obviously that didn't happen. But it's actually, you know, it was supposed to close at the end of this summer. And it's kind of nice having it open now, especially with the election happening soon. It kind of, I think it makes this issue very present in our visitors' minds. And I think that's hugely significant. And you know, you read in the news constantly about, you know, about the pandemic, and I've read many things that are saying that, you know, this is the pandemic, but next is climate change, and that, you know, it's already here. You know, to see what's happening in California, hurricanes that are coming up from the Gulf. These are issues we have to grapple with, and I think it's a very important factor in this upcoming election, and I know it's on a lot of people's minds.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, Alana. I really appreciate you chiming in and sharing. That's a great question.
Good work.
Next, I feel like I'm in a seance. I'm calling you forth from the dither here. Ben and Dylan, can you hear us? Are you together? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hey, Dylan, can you introduce yourselves and then give us your questions, maybe one at a time?
Yeah, so I'm Dylan Chang. This is my brother, twin brother actually, Ben. And yeah, so we got involved in climate activism maybe like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
We had started like a climate club at our school.
And that was our junior year.
Yeah, that was our junior year.
So now we're seniors.
Yeah. And, you know, I've always been very interested in climate change as a problem. I really resonate with what Ms. Hagan was saying about, you know, that hierarchy of nature, and about Western civilization imposing this artificial hierarchy that doesn't need to exist. That's definitely one of the main reasons I went vegan myself, also for the environment, but also because, you know, we're imposing a hierarchy on other creatures that isn't necessary. And yeah, I think generally one of the main things that guide me to be someone who definitely cares about climate change is just having an anti-authoritarian viewpoint, just, you know, believing that it's not really up to humans to be that superior species that messes with the natural world.
So yeah, I guess I'll go. So yeah, like Dylan had said, we started a climate club in our junior year, which eventually turned into mutual aid PHS, which I can link below, just the Instagram. I think I have the link copied already, actually. All right, yeah, that should work. Okay, cool. So that's essentially just a club. Dylan and I had started, but there are many other students in it, where we work to just provide surplus vegan food for families in our area that are underprivileged. Some of you may know that fresh food that's healthy and sustaining, like fruits and vegetables, many people don't have access to that kind of things. It's really along class lines. They simply can't afford it. And they're forced to just consume things that end up hurting their bodies, in some cases just decreasing their lifespan and other things by nearly large percentages, just food that is not vegan and made with animal abuse. So that's certainly something that as vegans, Dylan and I really stay away from, and we try to just help people, find their way towards healthier ways of being and just practice universal compassion, like we were saying. So certainly regarding the environment, I think that's just a really important issue. I mean, just as the younger generation, we're just going to have to carry a lot of that. And so in both of our activism, we really try to just be intersectional and realize how many different ways that the climate can affect all of us. Because it's not just people like Dylan and I who live in suburban and predominantly white neighborhoods. It's really underprivileged areas that will be hit the hardest. And we really can't forget that in terms of the climate, the largest cause of climate change in aggregate is animal agriculture. Another reason why veganism is a good choice in that regard. So I think we really try our best to be intersectional on these things and realize that it's not just climate, and also that there are many causes of climate change that people don't quite realize. So with that said, I guess I'll say my question first and you can go. I just have a general question to both Ms. Burko and Ms. Hagan. Simply, for many of us, the climate crisis is a really hard thing to handle. I know when I was just learning more about it, as I think we probably all have, just it can seem like some big suppressing weight over you. And especially with the findings of some research papers, such as the work Professor Jem Bendell has done, just realizing that it's probable that we may not be able to mitigate much of the climate crisis. And most of our efforts may have to focus on adaptation. That, it's just a lot to really digest and think about. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. So what, in your view, is something that people can do right now to kind of ease that burden from themselves and kind of walk a little lighter in regards to the climate crisis?
Well, I want to thank both of you young men. I'm so impressed with your efforts and your sincerity and your knowledge. What school? I didn't hear what school you're from. Where are you from?
Pennsbury High School.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, I think you have modeled one of the solutions. I haven't eaten meat for about 40 years, okay? So that's one thing I've done. Although I can't say when I first started doing it, I realized how significant it was in terms of, the whole issue of cows versus the environment. I think everyone can do something. And I think it's important in terms of being hopeful. If you feel you're doing something personally, it makes you have hope, right? Why do we march? We march, Black Lives Matter movement. We all have feelings that we want to express. We all want to bind together in community for issues that are important. So I think joining groups, like the Sunrise Movement, being active the way you two are, helps fend off any kind of depression you might have over the possibilities of the future. But there is a future, and you mentioned the word mitigation. Clearly, at this point in time, climatologists, people I work with in different areas, all accept the fact that we are mitigating at this point. It's here. The CO2 that's in the atmosphere is going to be here for 100 years or more. So we can't stop that, but we can work towards more green, clean energy. That is the key. That is the main thing, and stopping the use of fossil fuels. And the more we understand that, the more we can communicate that, the more we can do in terms of riding bicycles instead of cars, et cetera, et cetera. We're all making a contribution.
Thank you. And you guys, deep bows to you too. It is overwhelming and it can really just be too much. But like Diane said, I think taking care of our well-being is the first thing. It all starts within us. And
and then moves out. So the things that make you feel better, the choices that you're making, and I agree with Diane, lots of times we like thinking and searching, but usually the thing is right there, either within us or right in front of us. So just instead of thinking, what can I do, maybe acknowledge what you are doing. And that will already feel so much better because that's happening now. There are little things that you can do. And like I showed Wangari Maathai and Dr. Sylvia Earle because they're incredible pioneers, incredible elders, and we stand on the shoulders of our previous generations. And every generation plays an incredible role, and you are not alone. And we are with you, and we truly are in this together. And if anybody thinks they aren't, they're in for a big surprise. So you're not alone. And I created a resource page called EVE as an environment sources that Matt shared. And this is like a great way to go to see about the little things that we can do just within your own world, like what kind of soap you're using, and just get as much plastic out of your everyday use as possible, just whatever you can do. There's an incredible list of things for your body, take care for your body, for your household. There are people that are doing, I think if we just focus on what's working and positive change, will be filled with the things that are happening, because this is as hard and challenging as this time is. There's incredible innovations going on right now, and that have been going on especially during COVID, that are so exciting, moving us forward. So yeah, we're gonna, there's the ups and the downs, but just keep our sights high above the horizon. And it's
And not alone.
Yeah, and it can feel that way, but also, oh, forgot, lost my thought there. Anyway, just fill yourself and focus on what feels good and really is renewing yourself. And that's the greatest place to start. And then we're all learning. Here's what I was thinking, is that these things that are happening, this pandemic has stopped the world, and it needed to be stopped because systems are so corrupt. They are so sick. And the only way to make the change that we need on this planet now is for everything to stop, and for us to, have to think and reset and consider everything in our lives, which those that are awake are doing right now, and you're definitely doing it. Thank you. So it's like we're going through a birth canal. We don't know what it's going to look like because it's still being gestated, but we are creating the next chapter. So.
Well said.
Thank you both so much for those responses. That was really, really eloquent, really powerful, so thank you.
Keep in touch.
Yeah.
Keep in touch.
Grab our contacts.
Yeah, really appreciate your kind words. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dylan, do you have a question?
Yeah, my question was, what inspired you to create art that was specifically centered around climate change? Because I know there are a lot of artists who will just, make art about anything, but this was very specific, which I thought was cool.
Well, I don't know if you saw my talk, but I did show how I started out as a landscape painter, just painting beautiful landscapes. I'm from New York City, Brooklyn. I didn't see big landscapes as I grew up, but therefore I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, California coast, Maine coast, and I was totally taken by space, color. And that's where I started. But I said that it was 2006. There was a lot of talk. I'm a political animal. I listen and I read. And there was Elizabeth Colbert, who I recommend. She's written a much more recent book called The Sixth Extinction. But way back in 2006, she had written this book called Catastrophes, a notebook on catastrophe, which was about climate change. And I realized that I had to do something. It wasn't enough to just paint big, beautiful pictures, I was told, of the landscape. I had to do something about preserving the landscape and in a more active way. And so I started learning. I started doing research, and here I am today.
Yeah. I grew up, I've always loved nature and being out on the water. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia on a tidal river, and getting to the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean or any sea was always where I wanted to go, or even hiking in the mountains. I've climbed glacier capped mountains, and I've dove and been in tropical waters. But for me as a child, it was like, I think just always, and our mother really loved to just celebrate nature. And what if it was raining, we could go out and play in the rain. And but I at a very young age, I had my first experience snorkeling in tropical waters, and I was so blown away. I was 25, seeing tropical fish and seeing a coral reef that was extraordinary, and seeing the patterns and the colors that were swimming around, but then realizing they were designed so perfectly for their environment, as everything is in nature. It started my wildlife series. So I started that when I was 25, and I created an idea of a shield, which is a convex form here, that a shield is a thing of protection. It's also like a shield is like a family shield, a family crest to honor lineage of and in this case, a species of the animals we share the planet with. So that's always been in me. I think we either have it with us or we get to it if we need to. But it's been in my work and in my life since I can remember. And I think I love learning and growing like Diane, and it's so exciting to learn new things and then have it fuel our work and the people we get to meet and share with. And as artists, we can really help give visual voice to so many important science and climate, ecological, environmental issues right now that wouldn't, may not be, beyond a science paper.
Great. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Marguerita. Ben, Dylan, thank you again for joining. Also, I just want to add that Ben and Dylan and also Lily were a part of a student climate panel that we had a virtual event as part of our virtual Earth Day last April. So if you want to hear more from Dylan and Ben and Lily, I'm going to post a recording of that event in the chat there.
Is it on the website?
It's on our YouTube page.
Very good.
Check it out. Dylan, Ben, thank you so much, you two.
Thank you, guys.
No problem, Matt. Thanks so much for having us. Really appreciate it. Yeah. And thanks, Miss Burko and Miss Hagan, for your kind words.
Seriously.
Very welcome.
Great. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. Clady, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, that's me.
Hey, hello.
Hi. Hello. Oh my God. So lovely to meet you all. All right. So wait, do I tell about myself first?
Oh yeah, Clady, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are right now, how you're involved with climate change, and then your question for Laura, Diane, or Marguerita.
All right. My name is Clady. I'm currently in my basement. That is a fake Christmas tree. It's been there for years now. I never take it up. Right now, well, oh, by the way, pronouns he, him. I don't know. One interesting habit. I tend to end up in protests by accident. I obviously love going, but I go to breakfast, and then I'm literally this what's it called? I think it was last month. I went to go get breakfast in the city, and then I ended up with my friend in a protest about housing, and I was like, how did I get here? So that happens. What I care about a lot is my focus to how I care for people and what I want to see in the world is change on mental health and issues what's it called that reside in that, but also just in what's it called land protection. A while ago I saw that fracking was approved for many of our national parks, and that was really annoying for me because, well, I haven't been, period. So I would like to go to Yellowstone and see some Yellowstone. save some room for me. So that really was a sort of like a wake-up call to see that nobody would care unless I would care. So that's really like sort of where I focus. A couple of other fun facts. I'm Albanian, so I know 2 languages. I completely agree, by the way, Miss Burko, about like growing up in the city and then like seeing mountains. Like Albanian mountains are beautiful. But now to move on to my question. Let me just pull that up. All right. So one of the artists in the collection, Emily Brown, states when describing why she uses ink that when ink is on the paper, you cannot lift it. It is stuck on that paper no matter how hard you may erase. The best you can do is make it work with your piece. Mm-hmm. It is stated by many scientists that if we pass 2 degrees centigrade, then we will cause irreversible damage to our world. We have surpassed 2 degrees centigrade. If our environmental stain continues to grow, how can we lift that stain when we cannot keep up with its growth?
Oh, thank you, Clay.
Earlier.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Matt, do you want to answer?
No, Clay, thank you. I think that for that question, that's great.
Good question. I don't see you anymore. Is she there? Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I couldn't see you on the strip. As I said earlier, you're right. It's there. It is very much like ink, you know? So we have to deal with it. And as Emily said, you take that mistake, and artists do this all the time. You know, you go with the mistake and you make something out of it. So we're stuck with the CO2 and the methane that's now in the atmosphere. So what can we do? We can start driving electric cars. We can stop eating meat. We can make sure that we don't add any more. Okay, we can't go back. You know, it's not like the pandemic where, you know, it plateaus and then it goes down. This doesn't plateau and go down. That's a reality we have to face, and we have to do whatever we can, politically, policy-wise, personally-wise, to not let it go further. And of course, people who are in school, people who are into technology, people who are like scientists and inventors, hopefully there'll be solutions to some of this to make it better, to make a climate refugee situation not as bad as it could be. We have to change the way we see the world. As Marguerita said earlier, we try to keep working. The paternal system ain't working.
It's like, for that to happen, a lot of things have to come apart, and it's not graceful, and it's going to be, it's not an easy time, but it's an incredible time to be alive and to be a part of contributing to the public right now. But, and like, it's like going through a birth canal. So there are great labor pains. But it's just like Diane said, we have to work with what we have, but we are infinitely resourceful. The universe is infinitely resourceful and creative. So as soon as there's a problem, the solution already exists. So the solutions are there, and it's about us focusing on them and actually putting them into action. And a lot of things have to come apart for this to function in a greater way in our world, for sure. So we might be seeing more destruction right now, but it's like a big boil being lanced. It's got to be lanced, and we have to clear this out, the toxic, to have our, to heal. But yeah.
If I can add, the first thing we have to do, to be a little political, is we have to make sure everyone votes.
Exactly. This is something we have to do if you haven't already done it yet.
And get everyone you know to vote. And if you can, work at the polls. Do whatever you can. That is an immediate action that can happen in the next 3 weeks. So it's even less.
I completely agree. I can't vote myself because I'm 17, but as soon as I saw my mom and brother's ballot in the mail, I was like, y'all are doing this right now. Get on board.
Yeah.
But no,
Even if you can't vote, you can get other people to vote.
Yes, yes.
Lady, thank you so much. That was such a beautiful and thoughtful question.
thank you all.
I really appreciate it. And Clady, really quickly, what school are you with?
String Theory Performing Arts Charter.
Great. Thank you, Clady. I really appreciate that question.
It was
We're gonna
lovely
get to our...
to meet you.
Yes, thank you. All right, we've got our last question here. India, are you there? India?
Hi, for some reason I can't start my.
Oh, we can hear you though.
Here you are.
Hi.
Thank you. My name is India. I also go to string theory. To give you a little background about me, outside of school, I'm a photographer. My major is art, obviously. As a kid, I always found myself fascinated with wanting to make a change. And the little that we're taught about the civil rights movement just drew over the change that people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King made, and then that made me want to do research outside of school. So as a young kid, I always was just like determined to make a change and fight something greater than me. And when it comes to climate change, I was in Girl Scouts randomly. So, and then after that, I randomly joined WINS, which is Women's in Natural Science with Drexel. And again, it's about environmental science that was introduced to me from my counselor. So when I joined that really exposed me to climate change and made me start to get the conversation going about that. Mm-hmm. It just educated me in so many ways. From a kid I'm from South Philadelphia, so I'm like I'm a city kid, city, so it feels like home. I couldn't see myself not living in the city. However, being in that program, unlike Girl Scouts, it opened my mind, if that makes sense, to what's out there other than the city. And just like I never thought that I would be in love with waterfalls and seeing the stars. Because, as a kid that's from the city, that's not things that you see normally. So from joining that club, that made me start talking about climate change and environmental racism. And yeah, I think I answered the question about what in climate change interests me. One last thing I want to add before I ask the question is, I think when we talk about climate change, I think the student in the beginning mentioned environmental racism and how poor people and people in low income neighborhoods and communities get affected by climate change is something that needs to be talked about, because the worse it gets, they're the people that's going to get affected the most, even though they're not the ones responsible. So I think when having these conversations, that's something that's very important to talk about and to bring up and to keep in mind. And the question that I have is, when you first knew that you wanted to make a change with your art, what steps did you take to be intentional about that?
Started learning, started reading, went on the internet, just opened up to these issues. But even before I answer your question, India, you said you live in South Philly?
Yes.
So have you been to FDR Park?
I haven't.
I got someplace for you to go, girl. This place is beautiful. I was just there. it's like the bayou. There are swans and ducks and ponds and lakes, and it is the most beautiful environment right in your neighborhood. Okay, so I highly recommend that you check it out, and you will find nature really close by.
Can we get the name in the chat could we do that?
It's FDR Park. I mean, yeah, Matt, you can put it in, and maybe Matt, you could even find out the location while we're talking. So now I forgot your question.
About what was intentional.
Yeah, climate justice is part of it. I mean, clearly, think of Flint, Michigan. You know, think of the pollution that happened there. It's always Black and brown people that suffer more. Look what's happening with this pandemic. Okay, so that message has to be driven home to the powers that be, to policymakers. That's what, you know, Marguerita was talking about earlier when she said we have to reconfigure the structure, you know, the white male structure. Okay, it's not working. It's not working for the majority of people. So yeah, I'm with you, India, and it all is linked together. Everything is connected. We live in a cosmos, and it's a cosmos that has to do with food security. It has to do with floods and droughts and the environment we live in. So yeah.
Shelter.
Shelter.
The work for me, I think I just see things, and I'm so moved by when I'm excited about something that I need to work on, and it just like moves right through me. But often I can see it, see some things that I need to do in my mind's eye. And when I feel it inside and visually see it with that vision, the rest of the work, it's almost like 80% done, 75% done. And then it comes out into a form. It might come out into what I'm teaching, or an installation, or one piece, but it may just be an idea that carries me through everything. But yeah. Everybody has a different experience there, but.
I would also, that's an amazing question, India. Thank you for posing that. One thing I would say, not as an artist, but as a person who observes a lot of artists, is that the one sort of like undeniable thing that you have to keep focused is that your art can make a difference, and it can change the world. And I think if you just keep that and hold it as tight as you can, everything else, you know, will flow through that, and that'll make that task always seem in reach, right?
That's good, Matt, because it's a lot like the well-being and nurturing yourself, what inspires you to put your energy and focus on that. It fills our cup, and that just carries us and nurtures us, and it's so important. And as artists or activists, whatever it is that's really in your heart and your calling, your dharma, as they say, your path, is so vital to honor it as you want to honor life and honor yourself. So it'll change too over time, and it evolves, and that's part of the great adventure.
I just want to add, so thank you, India, for that question. Also, your thoughts that have been echoed by many of your peers too about this issue too of environmental racism and environmental injustice, which I think is super important. I thought that I would mention we have another exhibition that actually just opened today. It's called Sid Carpenter Portraits of Our Places. And Sid Carpenter is a ceramicist and professor at Swarthmore College. She in 2012 visited African-American owned farms and gardens in the South. Most of them are organic. And the sculpture that's on display in the exhibition are portraits of these different farms and gardens that she created. They're each named after the different farmers and gardeners in order to, you know, assert their individuality in the face of historic erasure. And so her work is really all about the connections between Black Americans and land, and the very fraught history of that relationship. But she's exploring some of those issues in her work too. So I would welcome you to come see that show as well. It's actually a wonderful complement to Rising Tides, which is all about water, and then Sid's work is very much about earth and land, and so it's a nice pairing.
Wow. Such great questions, such great answers. I want to take this moment to thank all of our student presenters, Lily, Dylan, Ben, Alana, Indian, Clady. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, look at the work, and ask those really important and very impactful questions. I also want to thank all of the students and the artists for the work that you're doing. All this leaves a very hopeful feeling for this topic and for our future. I lastly also want to thank everyone else who is here today and attending this event. Again, your support means a lot to the museum and for these artists in the exhibition. If you have the ability to come and check out the Rising Tides exhibition, I encourage you all to do so. So until we see each other in person, thank you again. Everyone stay healthy, stay safe, and stay arty, and we'll see you later, okay? Bye.
Thanks, everybody. It's a great session. I really love
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody for being here.
Christy.